Good afternoon. Let's do some business. In fact, we're doing it live right here, doing more at 4 weekday afternoons. We get right down to business with the news-driven hour right after Ben Shapiro and just before the 790 KBC News Blitz with Randy Wang at 5. Mottek On Money, live on the air on 790 KBC, streaming live online worldwide at kbc.com. And your on-demand Mottek On Money podcast, kbc.com, Apple, iTunes, YouTube, and all of your favorite podcast platforms. Stocks closing mixed today, but the Dow continues to wow, closing up 161 points, good enough for another record high at 43,239, logging its 39th record finish so far this year. Stocks rallied as the retail sales numbers for the month of September came in surprisingly strong, and the jobless claims numbers retreated. All this leading to a soft landing scenario for the economy. The Dow adding 161 points to an all-time high. The S&P 500, though, slipped 1 point, and the NASDAQ advanced about 6.5 points. The Dow has now set its most record closes in a single year in 2017 when it posted 71 new all-time highs. Gold also, day for the record books. Gold at an all-time high right now above 2,700. Looks like the price hit 26.9662 an ounce and has moved higher in after-hours trading. This, of course, as gold gets a boost on heightened tensions in the Middle East, the presidential election here in the U.S., and anticipation of further monetary easing by the U.S. Federal Reserve. The price of oil, meanwhile, saw a gain for the first time in 5 trading sessions, in part by an unexpected drop in last week's crude oil inventories and risk to global oil supplies. After the closing bell, Netflix continued the earnings parade. Netflix reported third-quarter results exceeding expectations on the top and bottom lines. Netflix stock took a hit during regular hours but has moved higher in after-hours trading. Looks like the commercial real estate business is back in the spotlight. More than $1 trillion of commercial mortgage debt will need to be refinanced through next year, according to a new report from Moody's ratings service. That's nearly 20% of all outstanding U.S. commercial mortgage loans. The yield on the 10-year note at 4.1% has surged almost 50 basis points above its one-year low set in mid-September before the Fed's first rate cut we'd seen in 4 years. New worries about the city of LA's budget because of lots of legal liabilities. I'll discuss that later this hour and other things with Susan Shelley, columnist for the Southern California News Group and host of the Howard Jarvis Radio Show, heard Tuesday nights on your favorite station, 790 KBC, and also on our great sister station in the Bay Area, KSFO. Small businesses in Los Angeles continue to face big challenges, especially restaurants. We'll get the very latest from restaurant owner and small business champion Angela Marsden, owner of the Pineapple Hill Saloon and Grill in Sherman Oaks. But first, on your money, the markets, the economy, today's record-shattering performance for the Blue Chip Index. Joining us live now, Gabriel Wisdom, co-founder and managing director at American Money Management and author of Wisdom on Value Investing. Gabriel Wisdom, good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Frank. Staying in the market has been a pretty good call, you have to admit. We've had almost 40 all-time highs for the Dow. I think it's maybe 46 or 47 all-time highs for the S&P 500. I mean, it's just been a roaring bull market, and it's been the best year-to-date performance that we've seen since 1997. Now, with Election Day only a few short weeks away, I know many of our listeners here are considering possible portfolio moves ahead of or maybe immediately after the election, but that'd probably be a bad idea. Everyone is considering green or renewable energy stocks. Should Harris get in, or the traditional oil and gas stocks or crypto? You just think might do well under Trump. However, these kinds of investment decisions, they're typically unwise, and the reason for it is that election results only affect how you feel about the economy. It seems entirely natural that you wouldn't feel great about the economy when your team is out of power, but the economy moves forward nonetheless. Forward earnings are strong, very strong, and we're in the early innings of the third quarter earnings season.
On the air live with Gabriel Wisdom, co-founder and managing director of American Money Management, based here in Southern California. And the Magnificent One, NVIDIA, continues to impress, hitting record highs again recently. It's just below its record high today after closing up $1.21 to 136.93. I believe the record high was above 138 recently. What about the Magnificent One, which continues to amaze?
It's a big 800-pound gorilla, Frank, no doubt. In fact, the reason for Taiwan Semiconductor's big move today and all year is because Taiwan Semiconductor makes the chips for NVIDIA as well as advanced micro devices. Now, the New York Mets owner and hedge fund legend Stevie Cohen has actually dumped almost his entire position in NVIDIA after booking almost a 900% return over the past year and a half. You wonder, why would one of the world's most successful investors, Stevie Cohen, sell most of his NVIDIA? Well, it may have something to do with the company's four largest customers, Microsoft, Amazon, Alphabet, and Meta. They're all internally trying to develop their own data centers, their own chips. In the meanwhile, NVIDIA has the big advantage. But, every one of these game-changing technologies over the past 3 decades, including, you name it, the Internet, they've gone through bubbles and then they burst. So the AI, it's going to be great, but the prices of a number of these providers may be inflated.
All right. What about on the earnings front today? Let's mention Netflix again here. It was down more than $14 ahead of the earnings news and closed at $687. Looks like it's higher in after-hours trading. This is one of the Mag 7 stocks. What about Netflix here?
I like it. It has been, such a great and for the most part predictable revenue generator. They are raising prices. They're making it more difficult to share passwords, maybe even impossible. Now we know, in after 2020, consumers were traveling more. They booked cruises they'd never taken. They were going out to dinner, and they were streaming, and that made a lot of money for Netflix and the other streamers. And since that time, streaming has become more normalized, but Netflix is the leader, clearly.
No question about that. Apple, of course, also at or near all-time highs as well. Even though Warren Buffett sold a chunk of Apple this year. Interestingly, Apple at around 232 and change here. What's the outlook on Apple here now?
Apple looks great. It's a very strong franchise. The infrastructure play there is it's unassailable. It's just one of the best companies in the world. Why did Buffett sell? Well, he sold too early. Maybe that's his secret, but he left a lot of money on the table because it's since rallied, and I think it's going to go higher. Not that I know more than the world's greatest investor of the last 100 years, Warren Buffett. I don't, but he was overweighted in Apple, and I think I'm certain he likes to be more diversified because I've followed him for many years now.
Certainly. And, of course, the other stock that's been getting a lot of attention lately, the ticker symbol on that one is DJT, Trump Media and Technology, was halted for volatility a couple of days ago and has seen wide swings, pulling back today. What about DJT here, which is seen as a proxy for former President Trump's chances to regain the White House?
Well, it's looking better for former President Trump. There's no question about it. Nate Silver, who's the statistician who, has come up with numbers that everybody seems to believe, now has the race at a 50-50. It's a coin flip. But the market is suggesting that maybe Trump has the advantage because DJT, as you mentioned, cryptos are doing pretty well. The Chicago Mercantile Exchange came out just 2.5 weeks ago with a Bitcoin and cryptos futures exchange, a futures contract rather, that's doing very well. Small cap, smaller companies seem to be rallying. That's overdue, but I think the Trump trade is on for now.
And speaking of crypto, we've seen Bitcoin back above 68K this week and moving up right now by about 600 to 67,358. Certainly, we've seen a rise in crypto's fortunes as well. Ethereum at around 2,600, and even Doge is at 13 cents, the highest we've seen in a bit, right? So I know, as you know, I've heard this before. We have the biggest fans of crypto as well as the harshest critics, but you certainly follow what's happening in the crypto space. So what are your observations here and what's happening there?
Well, admittedly, I've been one of the harshest critics until maybe, I don't know, a year ago. And I understand the blockchain technology. That's revolutionary. With regard to Bitcoin and so-called cryptocurrencies, will they really be a means of exchange? Well, former President Trump was a keynote speaker at the recent Bitcoin conference in Nashville, where he vowed to make America the crypto capital of the planet. So, and he owns some Bitcoin, apparently around $3 million worth of Bitcoin, which is most likely a rounding error on his balance sheet. But he's all in on crypto, and there are a lot of believers. And now with the Chicago Mercantile Exchange offering a futures contract on Bitcoin where you can trade it daily, betting on the upside or the downside, it's a very real asset.
And of course, getting back to Warren Buffett, you know what he called crypto? Rat poison, right? So he's probably the harshest. I don't know if you're the harshest, but certainly right there.
Yeah, that's right. He said it was worse than rat poison, actually.
Worse than rat poison.
Yeah.
Right. Well, let's lay it out there. We got to get it right. Let's get it right here, and that's correct. All right. At this point, let me ask you the big question here, Gabriel Wisdom. Any specific places with this bull market now, 2 years old and counting? Any specific places where you are putting money now and or taking it off the table?
Frank, the Shiller price earnings multiple for the broad market, which takes into consideration inflation, it's inflation adjusted, it's running about 36 times earnings. And historically, that's a very high multiple. Plus, we're going into one of the more difficult periods in a 4-year presidential election cycle, and that's the October-November phase. Regardless who is the next president, I think we're in for some bumpy times, which means keep some dry powder. And the companies that we're looking at, that we're considering, I call it a work in progress, on a sell-off include Aspen Technologies, information technology, Cadence Design Systems, that's also information technology, Domino's Pizza, everybody knows Delta Papa Zulu. If that gets cheap, I like it. International or Intercontinental Exchange, which is a securities exchange, that gets cheaper, I want it. And this includes all the banks with rates normalizing or maybe going lower. Banks are, in my view, a good place to consider.
All right, and one thing we didn't get a chance to talk about yet, the new record high for gold, right now back above 2,700 an ounce at 2,707 at last check. Silver, of course, has also seen a pretty significant move on the upside this year, just below $32 an ounce here at the moment. What about gold and silver here?
Frank, people like to talk about how there's only so much Bitcoin that's going to be available, and it's true. But if all the above ground gold were to be stacked beside each other, the cube that you wind up with would only measure 72 feet on each side. That's less than the distance between bases on a baseball field. And that's how rare gold is. And the other thing about gold that I like, it's retained its value throughout history. It's indestructible. All the gold in the world that's ever been mined is still around in one form or another. Could be in jewelry or iPhones or electronics, even in space satellites. So, it's not easy to mine gold. Silver, there's more of it certainly, but it has limitations as well in the Earth's crust. So I continue to like them both.
You probably remember the days when platinum was more expensive than gold, and it's way behind gold now. What about platinum and palladium, for that matter, which haven't gotten as much attention lately because they have not been hitting record highs.
No, that's right. And they do have a number of industrial applications, so they'll probably catch up. But gold is what the central banks of the world want to own. They're among the biggest holders of gold, and unlike foreign currency reserves or equities or bonds, debt-backed securities, gold's value depends on supply and demand. And as I mentioned, there's only a limited supply, and there is an increasing demand, especially as world population increases.
All right. Any thoughts on where gold goes from here?
I think it goes higher over time. The big move, I think, has been made this year, but I don't know. I can't predict the future in the short run, but over the long run, I'd expect gold to be far higher. It's inflation adjusted going back to 1987 when it reached $850 an ounce. It's way, way undervalued. It's undervalued by possibly half.
And it's not rat poison either, so it's got that going for it too.
No, and if you give it to to your significant other, they're going to be happy.
Right. Absolutely. Excellent. Gabriel Wisdom, co-founder and managing director at American Money Management, based right here in Southern California, and also author of Wisdom on Value Investing. Gabriel, it's always a pleasure to have you with us. Thank you very much for taking the call this afternoon.
My pleasure, Frank. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And out to the freeways we go now, 790 KBC.
Venus, if you will, please send a little girl for me to thrill.
790 KBC welcomes. Want to take a guess on this one? Yep, Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons coming to the Long Beach Terrace Theater on November 22nd. Tickets are on sale now at Ticketmaster.com. Right now, caller 9 wins at 1-888-795-2222. Get a pair of tickets to the show if you are caller number 9. Call right now, 1-888-790-5222. Get a pair of tickets to the show if you're caller 9. Tickets furnished by Nederlander Concerts. The Dow continues to wow, up another 161 points to a record closing high again today at 43,239. The S&P 500 could not do it, down a point at 5,841, still hovering near its all-time high. The Nasdaq up 6.5 at 18,374. Markets reacting today to initial jobless claims for the week ending October 12th, coming in below analyst expectations, falling to 241,000. The expectation was 259,000. Also, retail sales held up in September. Consumer spending still robust, underscoring a resilient economy that is now getting a boost from the Fed. According to the Commerce Department, retail sales increased 0.4% for the month, up from the unrevised 0.1% gain in August and better than the 0.3% most analysts were expecting. The volatility index today slipped 2%. Gold on a tear, back above 2,700, hitting record highs again today, right now at $2,707.60 an ounce. And silver has also seen eye-popping gains this year, right now just below $32 an ounce. Price of oil higher, up 16 cents at the moment, at $70.83 a barrel. Cryptos have also been moving mostly higher. Right now we see a Bitcoin up nearly 600 at 67,358. Ethereum up 11 at 2609, and Doge at the moment at 13 cents. Netflix down 14 and change to 687 and change after hours. The earnings news came in better than expected, and Netflix shares moving higher in after hours trading. We see Nvidia near its all-time high, up $1.21 today at 136 and change. The all-time high is 138.07. Apple at 37 cents at 232.15. DJT, the Donald J. Trump media stock, pulling back today by about 4.5%, down $1.36 at $29.90 a share. And now the latest news here in 790 KBC. Mottek On Money continues here in 790 KBC. The City of Angels having budget issues again. LA could be going broke after blowing past its yearly liability budget in just 3 months, according to the city controller Kenneth Mejia recently. Joining us live now is Susan Shelley, tax watchdog, columnist for the Southern California News Group and the host of the Howard Jarvis radio show, heard Tuesday nights on your favorite station, 790 KBC, also on our great sister station in the Bay Area, KSFO. Susan Shelley, thank you very much for taking the call this afternoon, and tell us what we need to know about the city of LA's budget situation?
Well, the biggest thing that's a drag on the budget is that for many years we have had unaffordable labor contracts that the city council has agreed to for city workers, and most recently another one. And even though everyone wants to pay city workers what they're worth, there's only so much money, and if they overspend it, we're in trouble. And now we're in trouble. We have liability claims which are in excess of what was budgeted by about $100 million, and they've been dipping into the reserves to deal with the fact that they have to put more money aside for liability claims. And some of this is from not repairing the sidewalks, where people fall on our broken sidewalks and sue the city, and then the city settles because, of course, they're right. So this is an ongoing problem, and it just speaks to total mismanagement by the city council and the mayor's office for years and years to bring us to this situation.
Unfunded liabilities used to be a big issue. I remember even during the days of former Mayor Richard J. Reardon, it was an issue back then, talking about the union contracts that you mentioned and all that. I remember when Mayor Reardon was advocating that the city file for bankruptcy sooner rather than later. How bad is the situation now?
Well, if the city were to file for bankruptcy, it can get out of its contracts and renegotiate them. But of course, you have this political dynamic where the unions essentially elect the people who sit across the table from them in these negotiations through contributions and political activity like making phone calls and knocking on doors. And so the unions have an outsized influence over the government of the city of Los Angeles, and fiscal responsibility is not at the table. So this is a big problem. And because they haven't maintained the sidewalks, they've made it so difficult to get things repaired in a timely way. They haven't prioritized the spending to prevent this kind of liability. Well, there you go. We have a budget crisis, and now they're going to be looking for additional tax revenue. But if they take that from businesses, businesses will leave the city, as many of them already are and have. And if they try to take it from property owners in a property tax assessment of some sort, that's going to have to go on the ballot. I don't predict that will go very well for them. Bail out our mismanagement is not a particularly persuasive pitch for a tax increase.
Notice that they've gotten more aggressive now in the face of this shortfall enforcing parking laws downtown. For example, I got a ticket the other day. It looks like they're going for the low-hanging fruit, going right down the line there at downtown Los Angeles and writing parking tickets while the RVs and everything else that have been parked there for years seem to get away with that. But they seem to be aggressively trying to turn things around on the parking enforcement side.
Well, that's pretty frustrating because that almost sounds like they're going after people that they think have the money for the ticket, and they're letting everybody else just slide on the same laws, which is not the way it's supposed to be. Certainly this is a concern. You should also keep a close eye on your DWP bill because that's a city-owned utility, and they charge you for trash, they charge you for sewer, they charge you for water, they charge you for power, and sometimes they overcharge you and move the money over to the city budget, which has been an ongoing legal fight. So these are all concerns, but the bottom line is that they have made reckless political decisions to reward political allies, and they have not maintained the city at the level that prevents this sort of injury to people who are walking on our sidewalks, and this is the result, that they're going to be in financial distress, probably right up to the Olympics, which will be very embarrassing for the whole city government.
Also, anecdotally, I've also heard that some of the claims, remember we had the spate of potholes following the storms this past year or two now, and I know someone that had two flat tires due to potholes. They went through the whole works, filling out those forms and all of that, and had documentation and photos and the whole works, and the claims were denied. So that's another thing that's becoming more difficult. Now, Susan Shelley, of course, you do a fantastic job on your radio show here on 790 KABC and our great sister station KSFO, and that, of course, is the Howard Jarvis radio show, the great tax watchdog here in California, late great Howard Jarvis, and I know you've taken a close look at the propositions. The election be here before you know it. Tell us, when we have a moment here, what we need to know about those propositions from a taxpayer standpoint.
Well, in the county of Los Angeles, watch out for Measure A, which is a sales tax increase permanently for the same failed homelessness programs. And this is a so-called citizens initiative, so they're trying to get around the two-thirds vote requirement for new taxes. And they might do it if people don't know. But Measure A is a sales tax increase. It doubles the Measure H sales tax increase from 10 years ago, almost 10 years ago, and makes it permanent. It was supposed to be temporary. This would make it permanent. So I'm voting no on Measure A because it's a huge tax increase, very regressive. Prices are high enough. And the other one that we're watching statewide very closely is Proposition 5, which makes it easier to raise property taxes by making it easier for local governments to take out debt with new bonds. And when they do that, that goes right on the property tax bill. It gets around Proposition 13. And this is so broad that in every election for the rest of time, there will be more of these bonds from all these different government agencies on your ballot. And they'll all have sugar-coated descriptions, and they will only need 55% to pass instead of the current constitutionally required two-thirds vote to take on debt. So very, very dangerous. It will cause people to lose their homes in a few years because the property taxes will go up and up. And we're very concerned about Prop 5. Everyone should vote no on Prop 5. We should not make it easier to raise taxes.
Excellent point. And what about that rent control measure that's going to be on the ballot here?
That's another one we're watching very closely. This is the third attempt by the AIDS Healthcare Foundation to get rid of a law that protects property owners and protects the rental housing business. So what this would do is it would allow radical rent control ordinances in every city in California. And as you know, when you're going to develop a rental housing project, a multifamily housing development, you're going to need a construction loan. And people are going to look at the lenders. They're going to look at what the prospects are for that business. Well, if a city can come up with a radical rent control law and prohibit, for instance, rent increases when there's a new tenant or any kind of rent control on even single-family homes, that would all be allowable. Who is going to invest in the housing business? Who's going to go into that business if 2 or 3 city council representatives can get elected and wreck the economics of the rental housing business in that city? And that's what's at risk here. It will definitely, Proposition 33 will definitely result in less available rental housing in California, and it would be devastating, especially for young people who are trying to get their first apartment. There won't be a first apartment because people will be getting out of the rental housing business.
And what about where do things stand on the so-called mansion tax in Los Angeles, which has adversely impacted commercial real estate here in the city, so-called Measure ULA?
That's another one that we think is just invalid and unconstitutional, and the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association is in court right now to try and appeal a lower court decision, which we think was wrong, that dismissed the case, but it's going to get a new hearing in the appellate court, and we're waiting on that scheduling. But Measure ULA is essentially a sales tax on real estate. And it was done as one of these citizen initiative tax increases to get through a court-created loophole to evade the two-thirds vote requirement and pass it with a simple majority. And we think this is completely not legitimate, but that's what the courts have been saying. So that's how it stands. We're in a legal battle to restore the constitutional rights of Californians against these reckless tax increases.
Susan, thank you very much for enlightening us here as always, and we'll be listening for you on the Howard Jarvis radio show, heard Tuesday nights here on 790 KBC and our great sister station in the Bay Area, KSFO. That is Susan Shelley, columnist for the Southern California News Group, which of course includes the LA Daily News. Thank you very much, Susan, for joining us live this afternoon.
Thank you, Frank.
Right out to the freeways now, 790 KBC. Frank Mottek here. Did you know that for more than 10,000 years, gold has been the greatest store of value and considered a safe haven asset to preserve your wealth? Now, with the U.S. debt at more than $35 trillion and climbing, not to mention the Biden administration getting us involved in costly wars, developing the digital dollar, central bank digital currency, and inflation still spiraling, it's more critical now than ever before to safeguard your assets, like your cash savings and retirement accounts, with physical gold. Opening a gold IRA is one of the best ways to secure your wealth and create a stable financial future. Stop worrying about your retirement and the market and cash savings in the bank. Feel confident, prepared, and in control with physical gold and silver. Give Joe Morgan a call at 1-800-753-8534. Mention Frank Mottek, and you could get $1,000 worth of silver with a qualifying purchase. Call now, 1-800-753-8534, or visit UnitedGoldGroup.com. Mottek On Money continues here on 790 KBC. Crime, homelessness, inflation, pandemic-era guidelines. You name it, small businesses in Los Angeles facing big challenges, especially restaurants. Let's get the latest now from restaurant owner and small business champion Angela Marsden, the owner of the Pineapple Hill Saloon and Grill in Sherman Oaks. Angela, wonderful to have you with us here this afternoon.
Hey, Frank, how are you?
Good. It's great to have you with us, and you tell it like it is, so go ahead and lay it on thick. Give us an update on what's happening there.
Well, we've got some good things. The Dodgers are winning.
Yeah.
I'll try to start off positive, but of course we're dealing with many issues, as we always are, including the fact that California wants to, for us, we're already at $17.27 for minimum wage, so it's not going to affect LA so much as it will the whole of California. But then we also have the minimum wage for hotel workers, and Uber drivers are wanting to put to $30 an hour. And I just want to put this in perspective. They're doing this because the Olympics is coming, which is great. That's great. But the Olympics is not here now, and they're not going to be here later. And it's going to put lots and lots of people out of business. And it's going to take, say you're a nurse and you're making $40 an hour. Now the hotel worker is making $30, and all the cost of goods go up. Basically, your money is not worth what it was. It's basic economics. So we got that going on. And then, LA City Council just gave permits for people to have restaurants out of their own homes. Did you know that? So you can get a permit and you can have a restaurant out of your own home. Look, I'm all about the entrepreneur, going out there and starting small. I started small. I started from nothing. But the restaurants that are on and open today, we go through a lot of restrictions with the Board of Health. We pay a lot of taxes, and we employ people. And we're just begging for somebody to listen to what the experience is. We have robberies going on left and right. Just next to me, in the Sherman Oaks area, the homeowners are being robbed left and right. We still have the homeless issue, which, by the way, CD4 doesn't want to criminalize homelessness. I don't want to either. But we all live in LA, and we all have human rights, right? We all deserve a quality of life. When you're talking about people shooting up on your patio, walking in naked into your bar, physically assaulting and injuring people, where does City Council step in for the patrons, for the people that live here in LA? When is it going to be an even playing field? That's what I want to know, Frank. When?
Dime cuando? That is the question. When is right. LA County kickstarting this new permit program for home cooks, as you said, with an entrepreneurial spirit, they say, who are interested in operating what they're calling mini restaurants out of their homes. So looks like they've started accepting applications.
They don't have any money. Sorry to interrupt, but they cannot find any money to assist people. I have a friend whose restaurant, he's no longer in business, and they're still trying to get $100,000 in back rent from COVID from him. So they had no money to assist in that. I have another friend who got his gas turned off because he got a $10,000 bill from COVID. No money to assist in that. They can't freeze the sales tax. They won't freeze the minimum wage, but somehow they're going to regulate these restaurants in people's homes. The Board of Health is going to have a whole new division to watch over this and to get this permit going. And then they're lowering the cost on the permits for the food carts. Again, I'm for the little guy. I'm not saying I'm not for the person who's trying to sell out of the cart, but when they have a cart, it's easy for them. They don't have to have the permits and the scrutinizing that we have to have, and they park it right in front of your restaurant. What are you supposed to do? Like, how are we supposed to get ahead? And if hotel workers' minimum wage goes up to $30 an hour, it affects every single person. It affects all of us. It's just so frustrating because I do try to work with the city council, and I do work with people within the neighborhood, and it's either so black and white. if you say that the elderly and the people that own homes and pay taxes and the businesses that are supplying the jobs, and by the way, we're supplying the money that's funding the city, right? If you say that we need help, it's just egregious. It's like we're some rich people asking for help when we're barely getting by. But then everybody else you can throw money at. And I don't think anybody on city council has ever owned a small business. I just don't think either they don't understand or they intentionally do not want to help us. It's just so sad and frustrating.
Well, we got the election coming up here,
and went out of business.
Give us your thoughts on this election coming up here and your interaction with the city leadership. And I'm sure you've expressed all of these frustrations to their faces, Angela Marsden. So where do things stand here? Are you getting any response here, or your concerns falling on deaf ears there at City Hall?
You know what? I keep trying. It's sad. A lot of the businesses that were in on the call that I was having with the city and LAPD have dropped out and given up because basically we get the attitude of, well, we don't want to criminalize homelessness. Meanwhile, we had a local business. The guy was taking off his pants inside, their medical place, literally threatening to rape and harm the girls that are in there, all on camera. And it was just like pulling teeth to get anybody to listen. In-N-Out, we're experiencing the same thing at In-N-Out that, the gentleman that was coming on, he just completely gave up and isn't on the call. So I'm trying to get more businesses back on because I do believe a line of communication is very important, but it's just falling on deaf ears, Frank. It's just falling on deaf ears. And I don't know how many more businesses, how many more empty spaces do we need in our neighborhoods? I mean, they just keep shuttering and there's no lifeline of anything. It's like everything's just supposed to be normal. Oh, by the way, minimum wage is going up. Oh, by the way, your liability insurance. You're lucky if you can get liability insurance, but if you do, it's going to cost you $150,000. You know what I mean? Like, I don't understand what their game plan is and their school of thought. And quite honestly, I feel like it's laziness. I feel like you need to be job creators and be enticing people to come to LA, giving them a benefit to create jobs. Because just forcing the people that are here to pay more only puts them out of business, and it only creates a wider gap. Now we have a lot of people that can barely go out and have a good time, and we got a lot of people with a lot of money that can do whatever they want. And that gap gets wider and wider and wider, and we all know it. The middle class knows it. I don't care if you're Republican, Independent, Democrat. We all feel it. It's happening. It's very real. It's right in front of our eyes. So we don't need studies. We need change. We need change in city council. We need them to start fighting for us, for the tax-paying people, as well as the homeless.
Beautifully said, Angela. We'll continue to have these conversations and get your message out, and I hope they're listening today. Angela Marsden, owners of the Pineapple Hill Saloon and Grill in Sherman Oaks, small business champion, owner of the Pineapple Hill Saloon and Grill in Sherman Oaks. Please visit that wonderful restaurant, by the way, and support Angela. Stay tuned now for the 790 KBC News Blitz with Randy Wang. I'll be back with more at 4 tomorrow afternoon here on Mottek On Money on 790 KBC.
The Jim Jackson Show isn't just another NBA podcast. Of course, I'll break down everything about the league that I played in for 14 years and now cover as a broadcaster. There will be plenty of interviews with the biggest players, personalities, and insiders in the NBA. I say there's more to life than ball. That's why on this podcast, I'm going to delve into other passions, maybe business and maybe travel. I love lifestyle. The Jim Jackson Show, wherever you listen.